Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 839 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian. Right here, Canada. Today, recording day is Thursday, January 29th, 2026, and it is a nice day at the Beaver Lodge. I think there might be a little blue that's trying to push through the sky, but I think it's mostly going to be a cloudy day from what I can see so far, but no snow at the moment, which is a nice, refreshing change. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing very well, thank you very much. Went to play two-stick curling yesterday, and for those of you who've been following, our season has been disastrous. Last year we were club semifinalists, and this year we've only managed to win 2 games all season because the ice is different, and we have just not been able to figure it out, neither me or my partner. So yesterday I went onto the ice, and I just had a good feeling, and turns out we actually did play really well. We still lost, however, but we actually played well. We actually were in the fight. The match went all the way to the end, as opposed to us being done and over after the first end, as has been so often the case. So that's that's good. That helps the mental health a little bit. And of course, I'm a couple of days away from vacation. So that is also good. And yesterday had a all too brief, very, very, very brief conversation with Devin Haru to do an Olympic and Paralympic preview. For those who are going to watch it, who are hoping for a long in-depth thing like we usually get to do, unfortunately we can't because Devin Haru is covering the Scotties. So I just got about a 30-minute window with him during that period. And of course, there was a lot of personal news to talk about because if you haven't heard, he is recently a newlywed. Got married last August. And of course, as we had reported, I believe it was in November, we lost the great Colleen Jones, of course, who was a dear, dear friend of his. So we talked a little bit about that before we got into the Olympic stuff. So it's short, it's compact. We give a very quick 30,000-foot view of what to look for and who to look for. But any time with Devin is quality time and enjoyable time. So I'm hoping that you will enjoy the episode, even though our time with him is brief. And we will have that for you on Monday of next week. because it'll only be 2 days before Olympic competition actually starts, even though the opening ceremonies are on the 6th. Competition starts on the 4th, I believe, with curling and alpine skiing and another sport that I can't remember off the top of my head. And then hockey and snowboarding are join in on the second day on the 5th. Oh, luge on the first day, and then opening ceremonies on the 6th. So I hope you will tune in to that. I will be on my way on Monday morning to Mexico. So our flight leaves at 8. So I've got a little pre-record for you on that day. And as I mentioned on that show, but I'll mention to you early, we're going to probably have a little bit of a different schedule if when I'm in Mexico, if we are able to do shows when we're in Mexico, because that's not necessarily a given yet. But please follow the posts tab on our YouTube page for all the updates, and I'll be able to let you know how we're doing stuff. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do lives or if they'll all have to be pre-records that I broadcast later, because it depends how much data I get on my phone and how much I am able to use the Wi-Fi is where we are staying, as opposed to just a Wi-Fi on whatever SIM card I'll be getting on my phone when I'm there. So uh, I don't know how it's going to work yet because I've never attempted this before, but hopefully I will have a couple of pre-records for the first few days that I'm there ready to go. And in the first few days that I'm there, I'll be able to figure that out and start doing either some lives or more pre-records, but that will be able to be broadcast at a specific time. Also note, Kits and Cubs, in terms of programming, that with our restreaming platform that we have, if I'm doing pre-records for later broadcasts where I'm not in the studio live at the time of the broadcast to start it, we are limited to 1 hour shows. So you could have either just one show that's less than an hour or two shows that would be scheduled back to back with a break, a small break between them to give you time to find the new show and then join. So just platform limitations. The interview we had with Shannon that lasted more than that the other day was a special permission that the platform gave me. They gave me a special membership for 2 or 3 days so I could air that one, but then told me that, yeah, I have to keep those within 1 hour blocks if I'm going to do that. So uh, things might be a little different over the next 2 3 weeks, but hopefully we will figure it out together and we will have our regular rendezvous just the same. All right. Let's get into it, Kits and Cubs, because we have a bit of limited time today. Yours truly has to head off to the Ottawa Beaver Lodge this morning. So let's get into the news. There's a lot of it. The principal stories, of course, is that the Prime Minister is in Ottawa and will be meeting with the First Ministers today. This has been scheduled for a while now. Because the prime minister came back from the trip and the prime minister had committed to having more meetings, more interaction with the provincial premiers after the initial few months where he had two very early and then it was a while before another one and the premiers were wondering what was going on. So there are more regular check-ins are now a thing with regard to that. So we have the prime minister in Ottawa conducting things, to borrow a title of a Maestro Fresh West song. Haha. Let's go. Now we're going to go back, way back into time. So a little Maestro Fresh West, but yes, the Prime Minister will be conducting things, talking about major projects and what has happened on his trip and what deals he's made and how things are going. There seems to be a renewed push by the premiers. Doug Ford is trying to do the Captain Canada thing again. Not sure if we buy it anymore now. With a lot of things that have been a lot of things that we've witnessed over the past little bit. We saw that, but yeah, he's still trying. He still thinks that folksy is going to work forever for him. And they premiers met yesterday together first, and then had a dinner with the prime minister, and then they will all meet again today. So we're going to have some stories with regards to that and other stories that sort of fit into that will inform what we will be looking for coming out of that meeting. And then, of course, clear across the country in Calgary, rerun Poilièvre, the leader of His Majesty's most disloyal opposition, the alleged leader of His Majesty's most disloyal opposition, will be hosting a convention in Calgary in January, where about it's expected 6,600 people are to attend. I think that is the maximum number of delegates. I'm not sure if all of them will show up for a convention. They're a biannual convention. And because the leader of the party did lose the election, there is an obligatory leadership review. The last time this happened was in 2004 when Stephen Harper had lost to, I believe, to Paul Martin, but they kept him on, and then he came back and then got his majority a short time later. Aaron O'Toole, of course, was stabbed in the back. So was Andrew Scheer. So there was no leadership convention after they had lost their elections. So Pierre has to submit to one of these. Again, a lot of the consensus is that he's going to walk away with a good result. Um, some of the pundits are stating that if his result is under 80%, there could be some questions or could be some additional pressure coming from within the party that could force him to go at another date or maybe later on a caucus revolt. We'll see about that. As I've stated on the show, I personally believe that a man who lost his seat and then gets someone to give up their seat to go run again in some place that is very safe to make sure that they still have a seat is not the type of person who would think that anything under 80% is not enough for him to stay. So if there is anything of the sort, it would definitely be pressure coming from inside based on a result that wasn't as great as expected. When Stephen Harper had his leadership review back in the day, I think it was 2004, he emerged with 84%. Some could say that that's the minimum standard. Usually over 80%, you're fine. And the 70%, there's some questions. And the 60%, you're definitely gone. So we'll see what happens with that. The conservatives also seem to be convinced, at least they keep telling us, and the media keeps repeating it, that there's nobody else on the horizon and nobody else is organizing. I personally believe that Jamil is organizing, but they keep on saying that. And of course, that excludes the possibility that there might be somebody from the outside who might be looking at this as an opportunity or good time to come in, as was the case for the Liberals. But the Conservatives are still on the Pierre is inevitable path that they started 2-3 years ago. And yeah, it's inevitable that he'll still be leader. There's no worry about that at all. That's been the through line from the party ever since all of this began. So we'll see what happens on that front. As we mentioned on the show, Pierre likes a sure thing. That's why he ran in Battle River Crowfoot, the safest or second safest conservative seat in the entire country. And the same thing for the leadership convention. It was supposed to happen later in the year, but Pierre pushed it up because I guess he knows or he's aware of what we always say. To know him is to loathe him. And Operation Keep Pierre Talking sure seems to be working, given the numbers that we have been talking about all week for him going into the leadership review. And those numbers did not get any better, by the way, once Léger, the public polling company, also released their numbers. Not good. The liaison numbers were indicating that conservatives would have fewer than 100 seats if an election was held today. That one is a little bit of an outlier, I would say. But still, but Léger kind of confirms that, it would seem. So looking at some polling here, whoops, where is it? The Léger, there we go. It has the Liberals at 47%. 47%. That's 3 points up since the last federal election. The Conservatives at 38%, 3 points down, so Liberals gained everything at the expense of the Conservatives. The Bloc Québécois at 6, the NDP at 5, and the Greens at 2. According to this model, Heather McPherson, who is in the running for the leadership of the NDP, would be the only NDP MP to retain her seat under this model. The Greens are at 2, also up from the federal election just a little bit. Of course, um, the Conservatives are already out there trying to denigrate it um, because it's not good, not good at all. Um, so yeah, those numbers are absolutely terrible for Pierre going into that convention. Just absolutely horrible. Um, Poilièvre is doing well among his own voters, though. Among conservative voters, his net favorables are plus 80%. Trump's at minus 27 and Carney's at minus 64. It's an interesting to note that among conservative voters, and that's all voters who self-identify as conservative, and that's the whole range, right, from progressive conservative all the way to extreme right-wing fringe. But the entire base of conservative voters do not have a positive view of Trump, even though they do have a positive view of Pierre. So anything that Pierre does that reminds people of Trump is probably not an advantage to him. There are some photos circulating on the web of Pierre in a question period on the first day back with his face, which is somewhat orange bronzed, and his hand, which is not bronzed at all or tanned at all. So I'm not sure if Pierre is trying to evoke Trump in his look, but that was very interesting yesterday to see someone going orange a little bit. According to Leger, Mark Carney's net approvals are at plus 25. He's above water everywhere in Alberta, and not Alberta, according to Leger, he's only at minus 5. He's plus 30 with women, plus 21 with men, plus 27 with 18 to 34-year-olds, plus 11 with 35 to 54-year-olds, and plus 34 with 55-year-olds. So that is uh, some extremely good numbers for him and numbers that are not obviously fantastic for Poilievre. Um, Other data coming along here from Angus Reid. How would you mark? How would you rate Mark Carney's handling of relations with Donald Trump? Great job, good job, 59%. Terrible job, 31%. And who is best equipped to handling Canada-U.S. relations during Trump's presidency? Carney, 44%, and Poilievre, 27%. That is from Innovative Polling. That's back from January 13th. I guess some data that's coming out a little later. So yeah, not great numbers for Pierre at all. Again, there is one number that is uh, going very well for the Conservative. And that's one number that usually is, and that's fundraising numbers for the party. According to the latest data, the Conservatives, as it should surprise no one, is the party that is the best at fundraising. Um, it begs the question, what are they doing with their money, however? But according to Peter Zimonjic of CBC News, the Conservative Party of Canada says it set a fundraising record in 2025, bringing in almost $48 million from more than 327,000 donations. Quote, these generous donations from people across the country demonstrate the widespread faith in our Conservative message of hope for a safer, more affordable Canada, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said in a statement. We personally believe that the Conservatives are a lot of that fundraising is achieved through fleecing of their donors, promising them things that Conservatives could never, ever, 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 ever deliver. But hey, outrage works. I personally believe that the Conservative Party, as much as they say they like to win, maybe don't really want to, because if you get taxpayers to keep you in the lifestyle in which you have grown to be accustomed, which and the Conservatives have a very, very nice lifestyle when you're bringing in $48 million a year, um, and have to do little or no work in order to get it. Go for the easiest go to, go for the smear, go for the, yeah, the laziest take on absolutely everything. Just point to everything, say bad, point to everything and say no, just obstruct, don't be helpful in any way. Um, yeah. If you get to be on TV and get to go all these fancy dinners and get to go on all this travel, and you don't have to get involved in all the messy stuff that has to do with governing, take all those questions, and sometimes things go wrong when you govern, and then you have scandals and messes to clean up. Why do all that when you can get Canadians to donate $48 million to you every year just by acting the fool? No thought required, no real work required, and the wallets keep opening. Why would you want to govern when you can get money, that much of it, that easily for little to no work? Why would you want to take on the bother of governing? Just keep on putting a good show. Uh, as far as I'm concerned, the Conservative Party of Canada, as it currently exists, has no purpose for existing. It serves no useful purpose. Its only purpose is to perpetuate itself via fundraising. That's my personal belief. According to Elections Canada, the party raised 28.1 million in the first 3 months of the year, 9 million in the second quarter, and 4.2 million in the third. Huh. I can see how the money would be coming in the first 3 months of the year, because we had an election going on. But 9 million in the second quarter and 4.2 million in the third is not great. That 4.2 million in the third was probably that quarter where Pierre was a little absent. The party says it's now filing fourth quarter fundraising report, which it says will show more than 6.4 million raised in the final 3 months of 2025. So still a little more, yeah, about, maybe 50% more than the third, but still nowhere near the second quarter. Now, the second quarter still had the election in it, however. Interesting, interesting. Quote, this generosity fuels our movement and helps us prepare to take on Carney Liberals whenever the next election comes, said Poilièvre. Last week, the Liberal Party released its annual funding numbers, saying that it too broke its own record by bringing in more than 29 million last year, almost double what it raised in 2024. So here's the thing. The Liberals raise about 14.5 million in 2024 and managed to win the election. The Conservatives raised a whole lot more and did not. So once again, Canadians, if you're thinking about budgeting and which party is better for the economy and gets better results by spending less money, the indication would be it's the Liberals. I mean, when you outraise another party by that margin, 48 million to 29 million, and the party with 29 million wins the election, and the leader of your party with all that money loses not only the election but their own seat. Maybe that should send us a message about how good the respective parties are with money in general. Just saying. According to Elections Canada, the Liberals brought in $13.2 million in the first 3 months of 2025 and $7.6 million in the second quarter, $2.95 million in the third. So it seems that there was just a natural drop off in the third quarter for all parties, because with a little bit of a donation exhaustion, because a lot of it was front loaded in the first 2 quarters of the year. Quote, this was a historic year and it continues to be a historic moment for the Liberal Party, said Azam Ishmael, the party's national director, in a statement. According to Elections Canada, the New Democrats brought in 4.6 million in donations in the first 9 months of 2025. Elections Canada has not yet published final fundraising numbers for the last 3 months of 2025. So Pierre is definitely pointing to the fundraising going into that leadership convention. Say, I'm your guy. Nobody brings in money like me. Record amounts of money. You might have to put an asterisk on that, because parties usually do bring in more money than usual in an election year. That's just That's just politics. But it would be interesting to see if we could have data for several years in a row to see in non-election years how that adds up and whether or not the dip. Um, I wouldn't count the third quarter dip as being particularly significant. That would just be donor fatigue in my eyes. But when we get back to the fourth quarter, see what those numbers compared to, and to see if the fourth quarter of 2025 was significantly less than the fourth quarter of 2024. I would suspect it would be in a way because the fourth quarter of 24 there was the drumbeat for the election that was imminent, although everybody believed that it would be October and not the spring at that time. um, but um, there could be something to see there with regard as to whether or not Pierre's fundraising prowess has decreased since he lost his seat, rather than before when he was on his way up, and by how much, and whether or not that would factor into some delegates' decision. Again, I reiterate, I don't think Pierre will lose. I think the danger for him will come from delegates that he may have picked a while ago, that have witnessed his performance since they were picked, and the performance of Pierre has been, objectively, by any metric, absolutely atrocious since then, and decide that even though they are Pierre fans, maybe even Pierre stands, um, still have come to the conclusion that with him they can't win, and they'll opt to thank him for his services in order to have a chance next time around. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, According to John Paul Tasker, or JP Tasker, Conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre's fate will be put to delegates at the party's convention in Calgary on Friday. While those around him are confident he can avoid being turfed, the leader's loyalists are doing all they can to ensure he easily clears this must-win vote. Poilièvre has been busy working the phones and dropping into ridings across the country to meet members who will decide if the party stays the course or holds a new leadership election. Essentially, the only people Pierre has been speaking to over the last number of weeks are delegates. He's leaving nothing to chance, said one senior conservative source who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal party dynamics. Poilièvre needs a majority of delegates to vote no on triggering what the party calls a leadership selection process to hang on to his position, but barely clearing 50% would be catastrophic. All eyes are on the margin. If a sizable number of delegates want to go in a different direction, Poilièvre could face questions about his viability. One party source said Poilièvre must do as well as former Prime Minister Stephen Harper did in his 2005 review. Sorry, that's a self-correction. I thought it was 2004. It was the 2004 election, maybe, but the review took place in 2005. 84% of the 2,900 delegates endorsed his leadership to quiet the naysayers. Asked in an interview what percentage Poilièvre needs to get to keep his job, Conservative MP Andrew Scheer, the party's House leader and a close confidant of Poilièvre, wouldn't give a specific number. Nobody ever gives a specific number to that question. By the way, that's sort of standard operating procedure because you don't want to set the bar publicly. And then if it goes just below that, remove the option of being able to stay. So for example, if you say, well, he needs at least 75% and he got 74.2, well, do you stay or do you not stay? Well, you said 75. You made it very clear that that was the standard beforehand. He did not reach it, even if it was only by 0.08, so he's got to go. Oh, but 74.2 is close enough. And, we don't really have anything better. Maybe you should stay. So, yeah, that's standard operating procedure that you wouldn't give one. Um, so I wouldn't read into that Pierre is nervous from that. That's just what parties do. Quote, I just want a great result. Our caucus is united. We're focused, Scheer said, while noting Poilièvre is appealing to new voters, and many of the delegates will be first-timers. We'll see what happens in Calgary, but I'm optimistic. Quote, I'm not giving up. I don't quit, Poilièvre said in a social media video ahead of Friday's vote. Of course you don't give up. You don't quit. You get rejected. Sorry. Did that petty just slip out? I'm sorry. Yes. You don't quit. People fire you. We really wish you would have taken the hint. Quote, I'm going to keep on fighting for the Canadian people and their chance to have an affordable, safe future. We know that's not what you're fighting for, Boo Boo Kitty. You're fighting to keep living off the public teat. Convention turnout is an open question, and the party said it won't confirm final delegate figures until Friday. What is known as the event is being held at a prairie city friendly to Poilièvre. Calgary is his hometown, far from eastern and central population centers where his support is weaker. The meeting is also being held on the same weekend as the Ontario Progressive Conservatives are gathering for their own convention, which is likely to Poilièvre's benefit given the tension between the federal and provincial parties. According to a membership list shared with CBC News, there were roughly 350 prospective delegates from Quebec as of last week, a number that is expected to fluctuate. One party source from the province said fewer than that figure are expected to attend and vote in the review. Ridings in that province could have sent as many as 936 delegates, given each electoral district is allowed up to 12 spots. That expected low number turnout also likely bodes well for Poilievre, given how relatively unpopular he is in that province, according to the recent polls. And I'm just going to do some math here very quickly, because if we have 343 seats and each can send 12 delegates, the maximum number of delegates is 4,116. So another gentle correction on myself, because I thought that there would be about 6,600. It's good to do math every now and then. That unexpected low Quebec turnout also likely bodes well for Poilievre, given how relatively unpopular he is in that province, according to recent polls. Poilievre had some success in the last campaign. The party had its best vote share result in a generation after it made gains among young people and blue-collar workers in particular. He is losing some of that vote since then. On Poilievre's watch, the party also picked up seats and broke through the suburban Toronto ridings that the Liberals had a lock on for years. But his detractors say there isn't much more to celebrate. The party blew a huge pre-election polling lead and ultimately went down to a liberal political neophyte. Poilievre lost his own long-held seat and only returned to Parliament after decamping to one of the safest Conservative ridings in the country. The party subsequently lost 3 MPs after 2 floor crossings and a turbulent resignation announcement. Former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole wrote in The Walrus this week that 2005 was, quote, the party's annus horribilis. Polls also suggest Prime Minister Mark Carney's approval ratings have held steady or improved since the April election. A Leger poll published Wednesday, which we just talked about, shows the Liberals are riding high with 47% of the vote among decided voters compared to 38% for the Conservatives, a figure that suggests a majority Liberal government is within reach. I believe that data was showing a Liberal government, I think, with greater than 200 seats. I think 206, if I'm not mistaken. According to Abacus data, Poilievre's personal ratings have reached their lowest point since the polling firm started tracking that data in mid-2023. Still, Abacus also found Poilievre enjoys broad support among the party's base, which is attracted to his populist brand of conservatism that is laser-focused on crime, immigration, affordability, and prosecuting alleged liberal failures. Unlike past leaders O'Toole and Scheer, Poilievre is also not grappling with any meaningful internal opposition. Conservative caucus members have said virtually nothing negative about Poilievre publicly, although one told CBC News they will go public with their criticisms if Poilievre puts up a poor result in the review. Quote, some people are not happy, and I think that's going to be reflected in the vote. You don't know what supposedly loyal people are going to do in the privacy of the voting booth, said this conservative, while adding Poilievre is pining for a time before U.S. President Donald Trump upended Canadian politics. Pierre has learned no lessons, and he's doing the same things he's always done. He just wants to go back and pretend it's October 2024. Sebastian Scamsky, a former spokesperson for Poilievre, said all is not lost for the Conservative team. While Trump's threats dominate the headlines, poll after poll shows affordability and cost of living concerns are also top of mind for voters, and Poilievre is a very effective messenger on that issue, Scamsky said in an interview. Yeah, Poilievre might be an effective messenger on the issue. It's just that nobody actually believes in his solutions. And if he does have a solution that happens to be somewhat decent, or a concept of solution that seems to be decent, it seems that Canadians trust Mark Carney to implement it. Quote, here we go. Again, Scamsky, got to take everything he says with a grain of salt. You can hear the hyperpartisanship dripping. While Prime Minister Carney can speak with highfalutin terms and get applause lines in Davos, you mean in technical terms, because he has a PhD and speaks the language. But let's say highfalutin. While Prime Minister Carney can speak with highfalutin terms and get applause lines in Davos, for the average Canadian, it's difficult to see how that connects back to their paycheck and their ability to put food on the table. Poilievre can offer a vision of hope and opportunity. Okay, while I laugh in progressive upon hearing that, Mark Carney did not have applause lines in Davos. He got a standing ovation, one of three only people in the entire history of the event to get a standing ovation. Mr. Skamsky, love your penchant for reductionism here, but doesn't quite apply here. That was pretty much a historical moment in that particular realm and culture. All right. Also, Poilièvre can offer a vision of hope. Really? That's not the word most Canadians associate to Pierre when they hear him speak. It's not hope, sir. Plus, Poilièvre still enjoys broad support among members because he has been able to breathe new life into a party and cobble together a coalition of voters that was unthinkable. Unthinkable because nobody ever wanted to bring that particular coalition of voters together because they knew it was toxic. Plus, Poilièvre still enjoys broad support among members because he has been able to breathe new life into the party and cobble together a coalition of voters that was unthinkable only a few years ago, Skamsky said. Poilièvre is resonating strongly with young and working class people who are feeling the effects of inflation most acutely. Quote, this is a guy who's been battle tested, who has a campaign under his belt. He has greatly motivated some Canadians. Giant swaths of Canadians are ready to vote for his vision. It's not as bad as the Liberals and the commentariat class makes it. It's not as bad as the Liberals and the commentariat class makes it out to be. No, it's worse. It's objectively worse than the commentariat class make it out to be. This is a guy who's been battle tested. He has a campaign under his belt. He doesn't have one campaign. He has many campaigns under his belt. He's been an MP for 2 decades. He just doesn't have the stuff. He doesn't have the royal jelly. He doesn't have the stuff. Poilièvre has tapped his former campaign manager, Jenny Byrne, to help plan this convention and corral delegates to secure a successful outcome. While Byrne stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the leader's office after the election, she's still a trusted lieutenant and party advisor, albeit a controversial one among some MPs. The minutes of the party's last National Council meeting in December obtained by CBC News show she served as Poilièvre's personal representative as the board convened to discuss issues like nomination rules. Byrne was there in the same capacity at the meeting before that one too, said a member of the National Council. Quote, some of us were told she wouldn't be involved anymore, and she was there, obviously, said this counselor. It's always her, speaking for the leader. Some things don't change. That sounds like someone who's not particularly impressed with that reality. There might be, it seems through that article that there are some undercurrents of potential drama going on. Not that we didn't know that, and not that many of us are not. The pool out there is how many minutes or days after Pierre secures his leadership vote does take before someone crosses the floor. Or maybe not how soon after he wins the vote, how soon after he makes his victory speech. Because technically, these are the last few days that Pierre needs to throw red meat to the base in the manner he's been doing since the election is over. If he gets his leadership win, then he got from them what he wanted, and then he can make a wholesale switch again. And ignored them for the next little while, until such time as an election becomes somewhat imminent. Be interesting to see how Pierre changes or doesn't after he feels he no longer has to serve up a daily serving, a daily buffet of red meat, and might be able just to throw a little piece now and then. Interesting. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here today with that? There's been some commentary from other leaders. Scott Moe expressing confidence that Pierre will win, but stating that he will not be attending the convention. Premiers usually don't. Danielle Smith will, though. Danielle Smith, who I personally believe is Pierre Poilièvre's handler. She's going to be there to make sure that Pierre says the right things, I'm sure, in Alberta. Tim Houston, the progressive conservative leader in Nova Scotia, apparently there's been some outreach efforts made by the team, now led by Steve Outhouse, to try and soften things up so that when there's a next election, the team from the Nova Scotia Conservatives and the Ontario Progressive Conservatives would volunteer to help out the federal party. Tim Houston didn't seem particularly committal behind whatever boilerplate things conservatives have to say about conservatives to maintain the illusion of unity. Doug Ford clearly not interested in anything having to do with Pierre Poilièvre on that sense, even though they were singing from the same songbook for a very short while on spy cars from China. But Doug Ford flip-flopped on that really quickly. I guess he realized being on the same side of an issue as Pierre Poilièvre maybe not may not be good for him. But they're having their own provincial convention at the same time. So a lot of people are not going to show up there. And another interesting thing happened. According to Sean Jeffords, Ontario Progressive Conservatives will not allow reporters to attend their annual gathering in Toronto this weekend, a move critics say projects an appearance of weakness and breaks from political norms. The party's director of communication says the event at the Toronto Congress Centre will be for party members only. The response comes after days of inquiries by CBC News to secure accreditation to the event. Quote, the Ontario PC Party Convention is a closed event and will not be open to media attendance, spokesperson Peter Turkington said in a brief message to CBC News. Premier Doug Ford defended the decision during remarks on Wednesday. You know something? It's a convention, and I'm out in the media almost every second day, he said. And we'll chat, but this is a party convention, and so we'll keep it as a party convention. Sounds a little bit like Jean Chrétien, eh? Well, you know, a proof is a proof because you have a proof, and when you have a proof, it is proven. You know, it's a convention. So we'll keep it the party convention. It's a party convention, so it's a party convention. That's why you, the media, can't come because it's a convention for the party, you know? Yeah. It's not clear why the Tories decided to bar media from the annual gathering. I have an idea, which comes nearly a year after Premier Doug Ford won a third straight majority government. Hundreds of party delegates from across the province are set to attend, debate policy, and hear from Ford during a fireside chat. Probably one of the reasons is maybe Ford at his party convention doesn't want to be asked questions about his phone records or the Supreme Court case for Ontario Place, or the fact that a second company that received skills development funds is now being investigated. Yes, lots of stuff going on. Or maybe that's just a happy, healthy bonus. And Doug Ford simply wants all the media attention to be on the fortunes of his good pal and dear friend, Pierre Poilièvre. No, media, don't come to our convention. Yes, I know we'll take a hit, but there's another convention for you to cover in Calgary. Why don't you all just put your focus there? All of you. Never mind what's going on here. That's not the important thing right now. The more important story is over there. And you know what? We'll make it easy for you. We'll close our event to media. So that way you don't really have any reason to be here now, do you? Turn your cameras on Pierre. We love Pierre. I have to admit, as a director of communication, even though I am a big believer in transparency, that might be an opportunity I might have taken myself as well. Oh, no. Let's not have media at our convention. Let's keep their focus on that other conservative guy that we don't like, who we'd really like to get out of the game, especially if we want to have a chance at running for prime ministership one day. I'm just saying. There's nobody organizing. There's nobody organizing against Pierre, except maybe Jamil and maybe Doug. Oh, man. The event is set to run 3 days starting Friday and is focused on the Protect Ontario theme, which was a key part of government's re-election campaign. The PC's event comes on the same weekend as the Federal Conservative Party hosts its annual convention in Calgary. Pierre Poilièvre will face a leadership review at that gathering, which is open to media. It would be hard for that one not to be open to the media, especially if Pierre expects to win, expects to give this big rousing speech when he's done. Of course, he has to give a big rousing speech before the vote as well. So we'll see how those pan out for him. Typically, political parties open their annual conventions, at least in part, to journalists for coverage. Last fall, both the Ontario Liberals and New Democrats held weekend-long party conventions, which were open to reporters. And considering that the convention for the Ontario Liberals was already going to be somewhat mouvementé is the word I have in English, in French in my head, is going to be somewhat eventful regardless, because there was a leadership review vote on Bonnie Crombie and not many people were expecting her to pass it. And there was a whole New Leaf Liberals organization. We had Nathaniel Arfin on our show to speak about it a little bit, actively campaigning for the fact that a new leader was needed. Media was at that one, but it's not at the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario. Again, curious. University of Ottawa political science professor Geneviève Tillier called the move surprising and said it breaks from democratic norms. Quote, well, I mean, we're talking about Doug Ford. He is known to break from democratic norms. The PC convention was supposed to be something uneventful in the sense that I don't see any issues or challenges, she said. Everything should be going smoothly, but now with this decision, we will talk about it and wonder why. I think the Ford team has maybe decided that that's a hit and a cost that they are willing to bear in this particular moment. Tellier said members of the public should have insight into what members of its governing party are discussing and debating at its political conventions. Quote, it would be normal to keep the population updated about important decisions made at that convention, she said, and also where the Conservatives in general are leaning and what to expect for the coming months. So it's really going at the heart of democracy. NDP strategist Mélanie Richer called the move disappointing and criticized the PCs for dodging transparency and accountability to voters. Quote, it seems like it's a position of weakness instead of a position of strength, she said of the message the decision sends. You want everybody to see the good news that you're telling at a convention, so why wouldn't you have media? Former Liberal Cabinet Minister John Malloy said the move is also misguided, since if there's any internal controversy at the event, it's likely to leak out to reporters. Now, that part is true. Quote, there's nothing confidential that goes on at a convention, said Malloy, who's now the director of the Center for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College. The audience doesn't have the benefit of a first-hand clip of perhaps a tough question or an embarrassing question, but you're going to hear about it, he said. Every journalist is going to hear about it 30 seconds after it happens. Malloy said parties typically use the conventions to tell their story to Ontario voters in an environment when they're surrounded by a friendly group of supporters. Quote, it really strikes me as strange, he said. At the end of the day, they should be projecting strength. They should be hitting up news stations to cover the Premier's speech. So yes, perhaps a wee bit of gamemanship going on here. So yeah, Conservative convention in Calgary for the federal one, provincial one in Ontario happening. Um, and of course, like I said, looking at some of the major conservative premiers across the country, how they're feeling about it, some recent numbers from Leger to go on with all the other numbers, and of course, the fundraising data. Based on what we've put out there the last few days, you kind of have an overall pretty solid lay of the land of what will be happening in Calgary. I believe the vote will be taking place on Friday the 30th, and the results will be coming out late. It seems that they are hand counting the results, of course, because red meat to the base once again. So the results will be out very, very late, we are told, very late. So we'll be watching for those. And on Friday night, if we are able to do a pre-record show on the weekend, to be able to get results to you, because our Monday show is going to be Devon. There might be a second Monday show programmed to start after that, or we may use that as the Tuesday show. So just so you know, if you don't hear on Monday from us about the convention in Calgary, you will definitely hear about it on Tuesday's show. All right. Okay. Speaking of what's going on federally with Mark Carney convening the premiers, there is a little bit of news with regard to that as well. As we mentioned, um, there was a pre uh, meeting day where a lot of premiers got together and they did have dinner with the prime minister, according to Darren Major of CBC News. Two of the premiers that met were David Eby and Danielle Smith, who have had a little bit of friction based on the pipeline. It seems that the mood was a little more cordial, even though nothing has changed much, at least according to BC Premier David Eby. He says there was no significant update on a proposed oil pipeline to the West Coast during what he described as a quote cordial meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith on Wednesday. Smith and Carney signed a memorandum of understanding in November that broadly laid out a path forward for a new bitumen pipeline to the BC coast. Carney has said that the project can only advance with a private proponent and the full partnership of Alberta and BC First Nations. But Eby and some BC Indigenous communities have raised concerns about such a project. Wednesday was the first time the BC Premier met with both Smith and Carney since the latter two signed their agreement. Eby said, quote, "The short answer is no," when asked if Smith or Carney had signaled that there is a private proponent for the project or any buy-in from impacted Indigenous groups at this stage. Quote, "There hasn't been any significant update in terms of manifesting a pipeline in any significant way, and our position remains the same," he told David Cochrane, host of CBC's Power and Politics on Wednesday. Some concerns that EB has raised in the past are that the pipeline could distract from projects that already have private proponents and support of Indigenous groups. Despite his concerns, Eby said the meeting was productive overall. Quote, "It was a cordial conversation. It was at points borderline friendly. We have a lot in common in terms of issues we want to deal with together, and we're trying to focus on those," he said of Smith. Speaking to reporters following Wednesday's meeting, Smith echoed Eby's sentiment, describing the meeting as, quote, "productive." Quote, "We've pledged to keep the premier in the loop," Smith said. "I would say that he's grateful that we had the meeting and that he looks forward to continued updates." Even though Alberta's proposal is still in the development stage, Carney was insistent during Tuday's question period that his agreements with Smith, quote, "will build a pipeline to Tidewater." Yeah, the Conservatives keep on saying like this. He hasn't said that he wants one. He hasn't said he wants one. So this is the closest he's ever gotten to say that in the House of Commons. On the record, it's in the hands right now. Eby told Cochrane that he has the impression Carney is firmly behind the project. Quote, "It's certainly very clear to me that this is a project that's being driven by the province of Alberta and the Prime Minister." Smith has indicated that she plans to bring forward a proposal to the Federal Major Projects Office later this year in hope that clearing that hurdle will attract a private proponent. She said Wednesday that the proposal will also hopefully garner buy-in from First Nations groups. Quote, there'll be a little more clarity about what the route is, and I think that will go a long way towards getting the support from First Nations, which I think is really important," Smith said. The project also has the backing of other premiers, including Saskatchewan's Scott Moe. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston also said he was behind the idea of a pipeline to the West Coast during a separate interview on Power and Politics. "That pipeline has to happen for the country, so I'm hopeful that we can move forward on that," Houston told Cochrane. He also stated that he was for Energy East, a pipeline to the East Coast as well. Until until Alberta brings up its proposal forward, the BC Premier said he's focused on other issues. Quote, "They're going to work on it with the feds and they've committed to keep us updated, and that's going to be what it is," Eby said. "There's a lot of other pieces and we are committed to do that regardless of what happens on the other file." All of Canada's premiers are in Ottawa this week as Canada gears up for trade talks with the US and Mexico, which are slated to start in earnest in the coming months as the three countries review the North American Trade Pact. So we have that there. There is a little bit of news coming out that it seems that Danielle Smith might be reneging on the terms of the MOU that she had already um, uh, agreed to here. There's an account here, Markham Hislop, who is with Energy Media. Hopefully, we'll be able to get him on the show someday too. We recommend that Energy, ENERGI.media. They also have a YouTube channel. And yeah, he has something here. that says that Smith is already trying to renegotiate her deal with Carney. The ink is hardly dry on the Canada-Alberta MOU, and Alberta's Danielle Smith is trying to wriggle out of her commitments. How can anyone trust her about anything? And he has a video about it that is just under 20 minutes long. So we won't show it here. It's something that I would have to watch myself. Um, and then comment to you on, because I haven't seen it yet. I just saw that going across my Twitter feed yesterday, and Mr. Hislop is a pretty reliable source, so I have no problem just giving you the overall line. But I will include the link here in the chat if you want to check that out to see how it is that Danielle Smith might indeed already be reneging on her deal, or at least trying to renegotiate the terms of the deal already. And now, of course, according to the MOU, there are milestones for certain things and how certain things will work, what the route will be work, what revenue sharing will look like, all that type of stuff. And they have certain milestones by which they need to provide more details on such matters, and therefore renegotiation in this sense could potentially mean, if we are being generous to Danielle Smith, that she is trying to create terms that might lower the bar or be as favorable to her as possible while working within that sandbox. Still committed to pathways, but maybe not wanting it to be as big, for example, or still committed to bringing the partnership in, but maybe more willing to put more provincial money into it than what she has already had, or changing, um, maybe having a proposal that would be majority led by a proponent, but in which the provincial government would still be putting some funding, which Danielle Smith has been on the record as stating that if the government has to put any funding into actually building up the pipeline, that it would be a failure. But we have, I have seen videos of Sonia Savage, who I believe was yes, former Minister of Energy and Minerals in Alberta, basically stating that she does not see a reality in which this type of pipeline would happen without some type of government funding backing it, or de-risking of some kind. So it would seem that there are already some players in Alberta trying to prepare the terrain for the fact that provincial money would have to indeed go into this, which for a while seemed to be a pretty solid red line. But perhaps that is not the case anymore with regard to Alberta. Another thing that premiers might be talking about at this meeting is the commitment to improve interprovincial trade, to remove those barriers. The federal government has already removed all of its barriers. And we have a lot of premiers still coming up to the mic and talking about how we need to do better on this type of trade. But the task is now theirs, right? It's now their job to do it. They might get a little help here. According to Jenna Benchetrit of CBC News, the IMF has weighed in, the International Monetary Fund, and it states that Canada's economy could gain nearly 7% or $210 billion in real GDP over a gradual period by fully removing internal trade barriers between the country's 13 provinces and territories. On average, regulation-related barriers are the equivalent of a 9% tariff nationally, estimates the report, which was co-authored by IMF researchers Federico J. Diaz and Yuanchen Yang, with contributions from University of Calgary economist Trevor Toom. That would-be tariff is even higher in service-oriented sectors like healthcare and educational services, more than 40%, where professional mobility between provinces is highly regulated. Quote, such a level would be prohibitive in most international trade agreements, the authors wrote. For comparison, the Bank of Canada estimates that the US's average tariff rate on Canada was 5.9% in November 2025. The report also notes that smaller provinces and the Northern Territories are disproportionately impacted by internal trade barriers, facing higher costs compared to bigger provinces with diversified economies. Quote, the result is a patchwork economy where geography and regulation jointly shape opportunity and where advantages that normally come with scale are muted, the report says. The Atlantic provinces would benefit the most from the removal of trade barriers, according to the report. Prince Edward Island, in particular, stands to save nearly 40 percentage points in real GDP per worker by removing those internal trade costs. Quote, the evidence is clear. Internal barriers remain large, economically costly, and increasingly out of step with the needs of a modern, vibrant, service-intensive economy, the authors wrote. Removing them offers one of the most powerful and least fiscally costly levers to raise productivity, strengthen resilience, and support inclusive growth. So there's a graph here and says that Prince Edward Island could have a 39.5% percentage points change in real GDP per worker if we removed all of them. New Brunswick could have a 26.6 percentage point, Nova Scotia 23.7, and Newfoundland and Labrador 15.4. So the four Atlantic provinces are the four that would do the best. Then comes Saskatchewan with 13.9, Manitoba 12.2, Quebec with 6.9, 6.8 for Canada as a whole, with British Columbia at 5.7, Alberta 4.9, and Ontario at 3.6. Because of the trade barriers between provinces, Canada isn't really one economy, it's really 10 economies, said Alicia Planinchich, Director of Policy and Economics at the Business Council of Alberta and Calgary. Smaller provinces are more likely to rely on trade with other provinces, she noted, which is why removing internal barriers in those regions would have the bigger impact than in Ontario or Alberta. It's not just a matter of moving goods across provincial borders either, she said. Quote, we have a lot of inefficiencies where it's more difficult for folks who see a job opportunity in another province to move to that province or for business to expand their operations and sell it to new markets right here in Canada. While some industries have been pushing for the removal of internal trade barriers for years, the movement gained wider recognition last year after US President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada, forcing both the federal and provincial governments to look inward for more trade opportunities. To date, some provinces like Ontario and Manitoba have signed bilateral memorandums of understanding. The issue moved forward nationally in November when the federal government and the provinces and territories signed an agreement to drop trade barriers on most goods except alcohol and food. However, services, which make up the vast majority of internal trade costs, according to the IMF, and which would make up about 4/5 of the GDP gains outlined in the report, were largely exempt from that agreement. Why? The report points to finance, telecom, transportation, and professional services as far-reaching sectors that ripple through the economy and raise costs for all of the businesses they touch. Ultimately, it will be up to the provinces to make progress on internal trade barriers, says Planinchich. It's partly political will. It's also partly that it's quite complicated, she said. There's this idea that it's sort of the singular thing that we just need to get together and remove. But in fact, many, many thousands of rules and regulations that are different province to province. And so there's quite a lot of work and complexity involved with figuring out how do they align from one province to the next. So there we go. Provinces dragging their heels and not being as enthusiastic as they could be when it comes to removing those trade barriers. And it would really be nice to see them getting on that at some point. On that front, there was some news between the premiers of Ontario and the premier of New Brunswick. Sorry. As they had met themselves between each other. And Doug Ford noted here, I joined my friend Premier Susan Holt in Ottawa to mark a huge milestone in our work to build a stronger, more united Canadian economy. In 2025, the amount of Ontario goods moving through New Brunswick's Port St. John increased by more than 150%. Together, we're unlocking free trade within Canada and getting Canadian products to new markets around the world. And issued a press release here. And it says, today, Ontario Premier Doug Ford and New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt met with representatives from Port St. John and industry stakeholders to strengthen relationships and celebrate the rapid increase in Ontario goods moving through Port St. John over the past year. In 2025, the total volume of goods exported by Ontario companies through Port St. John to international markets increased by 153% compared to the previous year, reflecting the success of ongoing efforts to increase trade across Canada and find new markets for Canadian products overseas in response to U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. Quote, The work we are doing to unlock free trade within Canada and get Canadian products to new markets around the world is at the heart of our plan to protect Ontario from tariffs and economic uncertainty, said Premier Ford. Ontario is proud to lead the country in tearing down barriers to interprovincial free trade, signing agreements with 10 provinces and territories, including New Brunswick. As we do so, we're also supporting the construction and expansion of critical nation building infrastructure such as pipelines, rail lines, highways, and ports, including vital trading hubs like Port St. John. The increased trade moving from Ontario through Port St. John highlights the growing success of Canadian companies' efforts to reroute supply chains in response to U.S. tariffs, as well as the ongoing work provinces are doing together to protect Canadian jobs and keep goods moving to new markets. It also emphasizes the importance of continued investments in critical trading infrastructure, such as ports, pipelines, rail lines, highways, and airports. Premier Ford and Premier Holt continue to advocate for the removal of internal trade barriers and improved cross-Canada and overseas trade links to build a stronger, more resilient Canadian economy. Quote, the Port of St. John is Ontario's port to the world, said Premier Holt. New Brunswick has seen a 153% increase in exports from Ontario moving through Port St. John, and that momentum is only picking up. New Brunswick is proud to be a gateway to international markets and support free trade within Canada. This partnership strengthens Canada's economy by connecting Ontario exporters to global markets through a modern, efficient, and reliable gateway right here in New Brunswick. It delivers economic stability today while building long-term opportunity for workers, businesses, and communities across the country. The vast majority of goods moving from Ontario through Port St. John were shipped to destinations outside the United States. Of the 8,083 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs, equivalent to one standard shipping container, shipped from Ontario via Port St. John, 4,153 of them went to destinations in Europe, 1,306 went to destinations in Asia, and 954 went to destinations in the Caribbean, while 733 went to destinations in South America and 670 went to destinations in Central America. Major categories of goods shipped from Ontario through Port St. John include vehicles, forestry products, agricultural products, and metals. Quote, today's conversation with Premier Holt and Premier Ford reaffirmed how Port St. John contributes to Canada's broader nation building vision, said Craig Bell Estabrooks, President and CEO of Port St. John. With newly modernized infrastructure and unparalleled connectivity, we're proud to fuel jobs growth in southern New Brunswick and offer all of Ontario new reliable supply chain pathways. Building on Ontario's national leadership in supporting free trade and labor mobility across Canada, the Ontario government recently took the next step to breaking down interprovincial trade barriers by publishing a draft regulation for the mutual recognition of goods and services, yes, from other reciprocating Canadian jurisdictions. This will reduce red tape and accelerate market access by eliminating the need for businesses to meet multiple sets of regulatory requirements that cost Canada's economy up to $200 billion every year and have held back Canadian businesses for decades. Ontario has also signed memoranda of understanding with 10 provinces and territories to expand labor mobility, reduce regulatory duplication, and strengthen internal trade. Quote, Ontario has taken unprecedented action to expand interprovincial trade and diversify our international exports, and the rapid increase in Ontario goods moving through Port St. John demonstrates that our targeted efforts are working, said Vic Fedeli, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade for Ontario. As Canadian companies look for new market opportunities, our government will continue to set the standard for interprovincial cooperation and foster the conditions necessary for a more resilient national economy. To support trade within Canada and abroad, Ontario is investing $30 billion in roads, highways, and other transportation infrastructure to ensure goods can reach new trade gateways like Port St. John, while ensuring manufacturers, resource producers, and shippers have infrastructure needed to reach markets across Canada and around the world. Ontario is Canada's largest market for interprovincial trade, and its purchasing power per capita is among the highest in the world, with two-way trade in goods and services between Ontario and other provinces and territories worth over $324 billion in 2024. Ontario will continue to work with its federal, provincial, and territorial partners through the Canadian Free Trade Agreement and other trade-enhancing initiatives to further advance interprovincial trade across Canada. So there you go. A little additional action here, and we can see some of the benefits of some of the collaboration that has taken place to date, and that is very positive indeed. All right, let's see what else we have for you here today. I got the IMF message for you. All right. Moving to stuff that's a little more international when we're talking about trade, there's a little more. Scott Bessent, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, decided that he hadn't opened his pie hole enough yet. It says he was at an event in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday to launch what U.S. President Donald Trump has dubbed, quote, Trump accounts, an investment vehicle for children. In an interview with CNBC's Sarah Eisen, Bessent was asked about the rift between Trump and Carney over the prime minister's headline-grabbing speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland last week. Quote, I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people. Yeah, he's already doing that without your recommendation, Scott, or your encouragement. He's on that. So you can mind your own effing business now. But of course, now we get to the snark. I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people and not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up. I would not pick a fight going into a USMCA to score some cheap political points. Mm. Carney rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message, and that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiples larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. Thank you once again for confirming that what Prime Minister Carney said was correct. Um, uh, Mr. Besant, if you are going to go onto a newscast and accuse a PhD economist who's been the head central banker for two nations, a climate and finance envoy for the United Nations, and now Prime Minister of Canada, and claim that he is engaged in his own virtue signaling rather than putting into place policies and strategies and tactics that he has probably been thinking about for 20 years or so. um, you're engaging in some hyper reductionism there. You're also engaging in some lack of virtue signaling because you have no class, sir. We also remember that it was your boss who lost his mind at that Ontario Reagan ad, claiming that we were trying to interfere in U.S. politics just prior to a Supreme Court decision. What are you doing? You've had comments about Alberta, and you have comments about what our prime minister should be doing, and you seem to have some thoughts about what you believe is in the best interest of Canadians. We don't fucking care, sir, what you think. I mean, we care in as much as we want to be an honest broker, in that we're going to have a nation-to-nation negotiation with you at some point. But we don't care about your opinions on what you think our prime minister should be doing. If you haven't checked, your country is a bit of a hot mess right now. Maybe you should focus your attentions on your own home. Just saying. And then, of course, I would not pick a fight going into the USMA to score some cheap political points. Sir, again, in case you have not been paying attention, you started the fight. You started the fight. You start the fight, and you start the fight with every round. Right before Prime Minister Carney went to China, your boss went onto the cameras saying that USMCA is something that Canada needs, but that the United States doesn't need, and that Trump doesn't care about it. And then again, that Canada has nothing you need, except all of Canada, because you guys want to take it and absorb it. But other than that, we have nothing you need. And then he imposed tariffs first. Trump keeps on throwing the first punch, and you guys keep on throwing haymakers ever since. You're picking the fight. The fact that we've decided to raise our elbows because you've decided to pick a fight is doesn't make us the villain in your narrative. You're the bad guy here. You guys are the bad guys here. Carney did not rise to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message. Carney rose to power on a message of Canada needing to avoid being in a situation where it is hyper exposed to a single point of failure, because the United States is currently in failure, sir. We're not happy this is happening. We would have preferred to maintain our own usual agreement, but you guys decided to change the rules. Mark Carney did not rise to power on an anti-American sentiment or anti-Trump message. Donald Trump rose to power on somewhat an anti-Canadian message, an anti-ally message, an anti-cooperation message, on a pro-isolation message, on a Western hemispheric domination message. Mark Carney rose to power by simply doing what he stated in his press availability the other day, reacting to what you guys have done when you changed the rules unilaterally. And that's it. The fact that you have made it more difficult to deal with you in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't mean that we are anti-American or that our message is anti-American. It just means, fine, if you're not interested in what we've got, we'll go find someone who is. Now, the fact that you're being total and absolute dicks about it does provoke a little bit of anti-American sentiment, that we will agree. But wanting to put one's own best interests first, as you guys claim to be doing, is not anti-American. Being pro our own survival is not being anti-American. And that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiples larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. Yes, and where you are is also not a great place to be when the leader of the country that you repeatedly keep on threatening is a central banker who understands the bond market. Number one, seems to have lots more friends and allies than you do at the moment, and is a country on which you do rely for about 60% of all the oil that you use. You guys are not in the best position either right now. Just saying. Your economy is also extremely highly leveraged. You're in debt up to your eyeballs, and a couple of movements on the yield curve for your bonds, some pensions funds selling U.S. holdings, a couple of credit downgrades from credit rating agencies is pretty much all that is needed to send you guys into a tailspin. You are not in the best position either, sir. Just, you might want to know that we are aware of that. At Wednesday's event, Besant also took a swipe at Carney's transition to politics after serving as a governor of both the Bank of Canada and Bank of England. In my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. In my communications career, I've seen what happens when some person from the business world tries to come in and be a politician, telling everybody else in the business world how it is they should run their businesses. That too usually doesn't work out well. I'm just saying. Besant's latest comments come on the heels of claiming that Carney walked back what he said in Davos during a phone call on Monday with Trump. Let me correct the verb on that. On the heels of lying, not claiming, but lying. On Tuesday, Carney denied recanting his message, quote, to absolutely clear, I said this to the president. I meant what I said in Davos. Basically, Carney's response was highfalutin, according to Mr. Skamsky, talk for, dude, did I stutter? I said what I said, and I meant it, and I'll say it again. And it's just started to snow again. Oh, well, more shoveling. Trump and his officials have made Carney a frequent target of scorn in the week since he spoke in Davos of American hegemony and warned that great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage. Last Thursday, Trump withdrew his invitation to Carney to join his newly created Board of Peace. And then, of course, threatened 100% tariffs. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, slammed Carney's speech as, quote, political noise, and we will defer gratefully and gladfully, Mr. Howard Lutnick, to your deep and profound expertise in all matters related to being political noise. All right. Um, yes, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lettner slammed Carney's speech as political noise in a media interview in Davos. Yes, political noise that had the whole world paying attention and still talking about it over a week later, but sure. Give me a break. They have the second best trade deal in the world, and all I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain. Howard Lutnick whined and complained. Oh, sorry. The article says he said. Sorry. I guess I must have read something into that. Carney has said that the blowback from the Trump administration should be viewed in the broader context of the upcoming CUSMA negotiations. Canada, the US, and Mexico must indicate by July 1st whether they want to extend the agreement, renegotiate its terms, or let it expire. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer met with his Mexican counterpart on Wednesday to discuss the CUSMA review. The pair agreed to begin formal discussions on possible reforms to the agreement, including stronger rules of origin for key industrial goods, enhanced collaboration on critical minerals, and increased external trade policy alignment, according to a statement from Greer's office. Formal discussions between Canada and the U.S. have yet to begin. So there you have that. Mr. Besant still performing for an audience of one. Not sure how that's going for him, but okay. All right, kits and cups. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. Kits and cubs, if you would like to help us, we would ask for your help by asking you to go down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. There you go. There's our QR code. If you go there, Cassie and Elaine would strongly encourage you to click with our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. And remember, if you're watching, if you go smash now, you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. And give us a little help there with the algorithm. And thank you so much for that. And if you would like to help us in other ways, we do incur some costs to bring the show to you, and a little donation to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund. Today, because you are what you drink, we are having a fruity smoothie. Where you can absolutely help us with the costs we incur to bring the show to you. A couple of loonies and toonies in our emergency hydration fund at our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, or you scan that QR code. Really helps us a lot. And if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, you can donate via our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And that way, no U.S. tech bro gets a share of your money. That share of your donation also comes to us. And that way, you get more beaver bang for your buck. If you are listening on YouTube, you can also contribute via Super Chat, and we have some memberships for you. And we thank you so much for your support. And if you're not able to contribute financially, we still want to hear from you, and we want a contribution anyway. But we would like it in word. Why not write to us and let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly, or offer us a guest suggestion. Send some articles or clips to us that you think we should be aware. If you are cooking, how about our Kids Who Cook hashtag? Show us what tasty treats you are making and give us some ideas. And of course, if you just have some good news, please share it with us so that we can share in your joy. Because with all the doom scrolling, hearing good news from you makes the job that much lighter. So thank you for all of that. Kits and cubs, because democracy is something that you do remember. If you're on Prince Edward Island, February 7th is the day of the leadership convention for the Provincial Progressive Conservative Party to pick its new leader, and there will be the third candidate forum or leadership forum to take place at the Confederation Center of the Arts in Charlottetown on February 2nd. It appears also that there is a by-election in the province of Quebec, in the Chicoutimi area. I'm going to be guessing that this is a provincial by-election, and it is. According here, it says a by-election will be held on Monday, February 23rd, 2026, in the electoral division of Chicoutimi, under an order of the Gouvernement du Québec issued today. The Chief Electoral Officer, M. Jean-François Blanchet, is responsible for organizing the election and ensuring its integrity. Nomination period will take place from January 22nd to February 7th. The period for registering or making changes to the list of electors is February 2nd to 19th. Voting days at the office of the returning officer are February 13th, 14th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, and advance polling days are February 15th and 16th. Anyone who has the right to vote in Quebec may apply online to work at this election in French. You do not have to live into the electoral division in order to work there. Young people aged 16 and 17 can also work during this election if they are Canadian citizens and have been domiciled in Quebec for at least 6 months. This work experience will give these future electors a better understanding of the polling proceedings. And I am including here in the chat a link to the place you can go to if this type of work would interest you so that you can apply. There you go. It seems here that the MNA seat in Chicoutimi electoral division became vacant on September 4th, 2025. The estimated cost of a by-election is $800,000 based on the cost of the last 3 by-elections. Election staff remuneration accounts for more than 50% of election-related expenses. Nearly 46,000 people were registered on the list of electors in the Chicoutimi electoral division, and voter turnout was 68.73% across Quebec. It was 66.15%. So we have that going on as well. We have our 2 House of Commons petitions E7027 to call upon the Minister of Health to use the disallowance clause of the Constitution Act of 1867 in order to have annulled or repealed legislation passed in Alberta or Saskatchewan that restrict the rights of transgender Canadians and gender diverse Canadians. So if you would please sign that one. We are at 29,630 signatures on that one. And our second petition is House of Commons petition E6821, which would ask Parliament to pass legislation requiring majority Canadian ownership of media, because, of course, it is now a matter of national security and national sovereignty, so that we can have majority Canadian ownership and control of print, digital, and other non-audiovisual media news. And so if you can go there, that one's at 16,613 signatures. And of course, Kits and Cubs, if you are interested in the high-speed rail project, Alto is having a public consultation, and you can participate by going to altotrain.ca/en/public-consultation. All right, Kits and Cubs. Words of wisdom. I don't really have anything. Eat some fruit today. Eat some fruit, eat some veggies. Those are my words of wisdom. Put some good fuel in your body today. It could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. No Easter egg today because I have to get going, so I will say amour et bisous right now, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, and with that, Kits and Cubs, I am... Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to say, at the count of 3, I almost forgot. Can I please have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, 3. I hear you, Kits and Cubs. I hear you loud and clear. And there you go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.